How about that, everybody? It's so hard watching those intros when I had great hair and now I'm sitting in a dark room with really bad lockdown hair, but it's so good to be with you. Hello and welcome to episode number 25 of Spotlight. I am, of course, Simon Taylor. In this weekly show, we shine the spotlight on the best and brightest in the tech financial services industry to figure out what gets them going, what gets them growing, and what the future of the industry is going to look like. A big part of this show is your involvement. So remember to leave your questions in the sidebar. We'll be answering them for you live through the course of today. On today's Spotlight, I am so delighted to be joined by Ryan and Miguel, who are the co-hosts of the Wharton Fintech podcasts. And of course, Miguel, you're founder at Giglamesh Ventures as well, and co-president of Wharton Fintech. You guys have been doing the fintech thing for so long. How's it going today? You feeling the fintech love?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us, Simon.
Thank you guys so much. Does one of you guys as well want to give us the 1 minute elevator pitch of what is Wharton Fintech?
Yeah, absolutely. So Wharton Fintech at its core is a student club, right? And then we are part of the Wharton School, which is part of the University of Pennsylvania. And normally, our members they have around 3 years of experience to 10 years of experience on average. We are a group of very diverse people with different experiences. Not everyone is coming from the fintech world, but everyone is interested in the fintech space. And we have both weekly events, either online or on campus whenever possible, as well as our media front, which we're super proud of, which includes our blog and our podcast, which is our jewel, and we will talk a lot more about that. Ryan, anything you'd like to add?
No, that's a great overview. It is a fantastic club here at Wharton, one of the largest. And, we've really made a push the last year to get into all forms of media, all channels that we can, to learn about this great industry with all of our fans. And then we do have a big conference coming up at the end of April 22nd and 23rd, the Wharton Fintech Conference, where we have dozens of panels with great leaders from companies like Wealthfront and financial technology partners. You can find that information on our socials.
Do check it out, everybody. I guess one of the OG fintech podcasts. It's good to be sharing the love with you guys today. But Miguel, give me the history. How did all of this start?
Yeah, well, the podcast has already a few years. Podcast has been around since 2015. It was started by actually the co-founders of Wharton Fintech, Daniel McCauley and Steve Weiner. And they also launched not just the club, but the podcast. And it started like a student show to educate students on the industry, but it quickly evolved into hosting some of the most interesting people on the industry, but mostly with an initial focus in the US. But over the last year or so, we've taken it to the next level. And I'll let Ryan talk about, the last year, which has been super exciting for us.
Yeah, it's been incredible. So for some context, we rotate the hosts every year. It's a group of second years. Miguel and I got elected to lead it. He gave me a call probably in March, right in peak COVID. I had never met him. And he kind of laid out this vision and said, I want to take this podcast to the next level. Everyone is stuck in their homes. We don't have, kind of the FOMO of in-person school. We have this amazing platform. Let's, take it to the moon, to use a cultural example. And in the last year, we've moved from probably 2 episodes a month to 4 episodes a week. We've expanded into video content, long form and short form blogs. We've gone into Twitter AMAs, and the growth has shown. We're reaching probably over 125,000 people a month, are doing millions of impressions a quarter on social media. And I mean, the reactions have just been amazing. And we've learned a ton along the way and met, of course, some amazing fintech leaders.
It's incredible. And speaking of fintech leaders, just give me a flavor for some of the folks that you've had on. I think you mentioned some that are coming to your conference, but can you give me an example of who you've had on, and maybe a couple of personal favorites as well?
Ryan?
Sure. So from the CEO front of startups, we've had CEOs of people like Acorns, Wealthfront, M1 Finance, Current, SoFi, and Galileo came on to do an M&A episode. We've had VCs like Frank Rotman from QED, people from Andreessen Horowitz, Bessemer, We had the founders of the head of Y Combinator, and just so many others. So if it's in the fintech space, we've probably covered it or covered their competitor. And we have amazing guests coming up, including the former CEO of Vanguard, Adina Friedman of NASDAQ, Jeff Immelt, the former CEO of GE, and just so many more. And in terms of personal favorites, that's a tough one. I would say probably my conversation with Bill McNabb, the former CEO of Vanguard, was fantastic. I think his perspective, the episode's coming out in a couple of weeks, was just amazing. And we do tend to kind of focus on the upstarts in the space so much, and going to just kind of the incumbent of incumbents in Vanguard was amazing. And he has some great anecdotes to share.
Yeah. And yes, Simon, you were a guest as well. Yeah. And one of my favorite parts has been hosting fintech leaders from around the world. So we had, for example, the CEO of Tinkoff, which is probably one of the best run fintechs on the planet, but yet most people in the Western world don't know about them. They're based in Russia. We also had David Vélez from Nubank, and just a number of amazing people. And for me, I mean, my first guest was Pedro Conrade, who's the founder and CEO of Neon, probably one of the largest fintechs Latin America, definitely one of the largest in Brazil. And my favorite one, this is probably for personal reasons. I'm from Bolivia, I'm an immigrant to the US, and Marcelo Claure, who's the COO at SoftBank and also leads the SoftBank Latin American fund. He came on the show about a month ago, and for me that was just a personal high, and super proud to have him on the show.
It's interesting how that personal connection can sometimes make a little difference for you. And I love that point about Tinkoff, the point about Nubank. The Monzas, the Starlings, the Revoluts, the Chimes, the Varos get a lot of attention, Robinhood, Acorns. But the LATAM story is really, really interesting, and I guess very close to home for you, Miguel, and everything you see there. Has there been something about the pandemic that's made you guys look international when you were starting to think about, let's cover some stuff outside of the US?
Yeah, I'd say two things. First of all, now everyone was behind the screen, right? So it didn't matter. We were interviewing people who were around the corner in Philadelphia or New York, and then 2 hours later, turning around and interviewing people in Brazil and Russia, right? So it's made it a lot easier to get international guests, right? And the expectation, of course, during the pandemic has been we're going to do it all over Zoom or what have you. But then at the same time, some of the most impactful stories of COVID were happening in international markets around the world. So I'll give you an example. We had the founder and CEO of Zenobe, Tarek El-Sharif, based in Colombia. And we talked to them, I think it was a week after they had just partnered with the government to distribute much needed help to low-income people in Colombia. And why did the government partner with them? Well, because they couldn't get to these people through banks. The traditional system was not serving them, right? So fintech companies became especially important, right? So it's been exciting to cover this during the pandemic.
Ryan, what are your observations as well as you've been speaking to entrepreneurs, founders, builders around the world? What have been the big themes for you out of the last 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially with the pandemic, Miguel hit on a lot of great points. Of course, everyone's stuck at home, so it's a little bit easier to get some time on their schedules that you're not flying around the world. But so many people that I spoke with, I think, got very introspective in their interviews with, this pandemic going on. And I think refocused on the mission of their company. A lot of the founders before and after the show would say, I get so heads down on growing revenue, growing my metrics, hitting targets, raising. Sometimes, podcasts like this give me an opportunity to center myself and realize, why we're really in this. And, Stuart Sopp of Current was actually my first guest. He came on the show, I think, in April, and it was right in the wake of the pandemic and the first round of stimulus checks. And Stuart just kind of laying out his vision of how powerful his, challenger neobank could be in getting much needed money to people, weeks or a week or two before the government could. and how much this really helps everyday people. And then we had Plaid on, in the fall, their head of policy, John Pitts. They commissioned a study with the Harris Poll to understand just how much fintech has helped everyday consumers. So, it's not just an API company, it's not just a neobank. These are products that are changing people's lives, and fintech has been, the ultimate kind of winner. The entire thesis of the industry has been proven during COVID.
There's a couple of interesting threads there I want to pick up on. Thread number one is this idea that there's the new purpose-driven neobank. So if the first wave of neobanks was a neobank, just a bank that didn't suck, it had good UX, it had get paid early, it had all of that kind of stuff. But now you see with Daylight, with Greenwood Bank, with First Boulevard, you're seeing these, even as it Cheddar or Cheese, I never remember which one it is, I think it's Cheese, that there are banks for communities that are digital, and they don't have to be geographically located. They're community banks, but they're more tribal in nature. Miguel, is this something you're seeing, and what do you think's led to that second wave? What do you think's differential about it? Is it marketing, or is it more than that?
Yeah, this is actually an area I'm particularly excited. I've actually, I'm an investor in a neobank that is focused on the Latino population in the US. And why is this the case? Why is this a good business proposition, right? Because mainstream neobanks, or just companies in general, haven't been as focused on servicing these specific segments of the population. And you have to recognize they have unique needs, right? The way you talk to them has to be different, right? And who's gonna understand that if not the people themselves? So I love that the ones launching this neobanks focus on community are members of that community as well, right? So I think there's a lot of value there, more to come for sure. Call it specialized lending, call it community banking, whatever. But there's a lot more to be done there.
Interesting. And Ryan, we were on the podcast, we talked a little bit about DeFi wallets and that sort of blend between the world that was crypto and fintech. There's apps like Donut, there are other services out there like BlockFi where this is, and then there's Square Cash, of course, really starting to blur these lines. What are you seeing in terms of problems that's solving for the consumer? Why are people adopting that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a great point, and to echo, what Miguel said, of course, what you're saying here, it takes me back to a conversation I had with Life Abraham, who's the CEO of Public, and he said, the next 10 years, the products are commoditized. It's a race to the bottom in BIPs, fees, etc. How do you distinguish yourself? How do you build a relationship again with the customer? Because again, the products, everybody's got a robo-advisor these days, etc. It's about building community, fostering a collectivist environment, and capitalizing on that brand. Public has done a great job, of course, building the community. There are all these types of affinity-focused fintechs, and that is the key. And you look at the younger generation, they're a collectivist culture. They want a sense of belonging. They want multiplayer fintech. They want to invest together. They want to feel like a part of something. They want to be where their influencers and their idols are and back them up as well. And I think, like the DeFi and crypto example, some of these tokens and protocols have become communities and full financial systems within themselves. And the analogy has been made a couple times where, they're all like their own kind of little fiefdoms around the world. And I think we're going to start to see that, and fintechs need to start building a full ecosystem around themselves to keep succeeding.
I love that term that you just threw out there, multiplayer fintech. Do you want to just unpack that? Because it is a term that's been gaining popularity in the last 6 months. I don't know who to credit or who said it first, but it is. I certainly saw it with Card versus Card, which was the original. I don't know if you guys saw this. This was the art drop from Mischief, where they had the first multiplayer fintech card, and the idea was the card would be loaded with VC cash of $100,000 every sort of few days, and then there was a race to try and burn the VC cash. And everyone was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. And of course, it was art. It was designed to be stupid and make fun of fintech. But talk to me about multiplayer fintech. There's divorced parents. There's all kinds of use cases here where actually there's more than one user and it's not just joint accounts anymore.
Yeah, I can take this to start, Miguel. I mean, multiplayer fintech is kind of exactly what it says in the phrase, where multiple people can kind of integrate on, let's say, the same investment account or bank or purpose. Some ideas that come to mind, I love what Charlie Olson at Pando has built, where people can build these kind of income sharing agreements. It started from minor league baseball players to all, kind of get an income sharing agreement into each other. And then there are also tinier companies like Bro Capital who came on the podcast. And it's this, kind of built-in community of young Black men that have, high potential to succeed, pooling their capital together in investments, sharing money, sharing allocations, sharing ideas. And again, going back to the community point, putting your money behind it and investing and spending along with, the people that you align with is as powerful as it gets. And, for Bro Capital, anyone who's on that platform, they're not leaving anytime soon. And it benefits all of their people.
Miguel, I'm interested in your views on this and also other big trends you've seen that we haven't covered so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely here to stay, right? I mean, I think technology has enabled a level of transparency and just having the collaboration of multiple users into one complex account at the same time, right? And and you're seeing it in so many areas. I'm blanking on some company names that I would love to mention. My apologies. But this is definitely here to stay, right? And it's also, there is, you mentioned VCs a little bit a while ago. I mean, VCs are increasingly paying attention to this kind of technologies, right? And particularly technologies that are going to bridge the gap that exists today between traditional fintech and fintech that's starting to focus on, for example, Gen Z, right? Or the interaction with parents and Gen Zs, right? So I'm excited. I think this is just the beginning for multiplayer.
Just the beginning. I like it. And fintech seems to be the hottest thing in VC at the moment. I mean, of Y Combinator's last batch, there was 43 companies that came through in fintech, and a lot of them in that B2B fintech space. So, whilst we've talked a lot about neobanks, we've talked a lot about the consumer side. There's B2B as in servicing a small business or a corporate, but there's also servicing other fintechs as a client base. What are some examples, Miguel, you've seen of companies in that space? Could you unpack that space for me?
Yeah. Well, I think there's this natural evolution, right? Not just in the US, not just in Europe, but around the world, where you start with a B2C model, right? And neobanks are a great start. Then you transition to a B2B model. And, we recently had, for example, Everett Cook from Row, right, which is a community bank. It's a bank, but for SMBs, right? And then you also transition to the kind of B2B fintech that actually I'm very excited about, and is more the enablers and the infrastructure, right? And this is an area that is definitely a lot more developed in the US and Europe. But if you think of a place, a continent like Latin America or Africa, where the incumbent infrastructure sometimes is not even there, right? This is something we're starting to see, right? And the appearance and then founding of platforms that are, first of all, servicing the existing fintech ecosystem, and then they use that as a ramp to graduate and serve even the incumbents, right? And you start by just a simple vertical. So one company that we had on the show is Arcus, for example. And Arcus, they are both a US and Mexican company, and they are helping companies in Mexico offer fintech services, right? So no longer do you need to do it from scratch, right, within your own company. Now you can start to go out and get some off-the-shelf solutions. So I think that's an area I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to.
And that's so powerful because it reduces the time to market. It reduces your cost of getting to market. It allows you to focus on what differentiates you. And as you said, I think it was Ryan, you said the financial products has become so commoditized. It's my co-founder, Jason, who, since the dawn of 11FS has talked about the commodity financial products that most banks still sell that compete on price is just a race to the bottom. It's a scale game. And actually, when you're very small, you're not playing a scale game. You're playing an attention game. If we live in the attention economy, then I need to break through and get attention. And one way to do that is with community. Another way to do that is to help people compress their time to market that are building for communities. So it's really interesting how we've seen both of those two things kind of play out. Ryan, I want to double click on the rise of payroll APIs. This is a super interesting space that maybe didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago. Can you think of some examples of payroll APIs and the kind of things that could unlock?
Yeah, so it's not too much time on, to be transparent, payroll APIs, but I know that it is a huge problem from a lot of guests that we've had on the show. And I think unlocking, more flexible, for example, direct deposits. I know Plaid has been involved in this tool, will really unlock kind of the commoditized product of multiple fintechs. So when you're able to now kind of direct deposit, let's say payroll, into multiple accounts instead of just your checking account, you can get your $500 into your Chime account to get early access to your wages. But then you can put, $15 in your Wealthfront or your Betterment or your Acorns account or your Marcus account or even Coinbase or something like that. And I think that is such a powerful trend to enable and empower everyday people to get, specialized in their financial planning across so many products. I mean, Lex Sokolin came on and said, so many fintechs are just building a couple of yeah, absolutely love Lex, a couple of A+ robots for a couple use cases. And that's, I think, so powerful that every company right now is just kind of focusing on a couple A+ bots. And then there are a couple companies going the super app route, building a bunch of B2B+ bots. But if you're able to allocate your personal capital across all of these highly specialized institutions, I think everybody wins in fintech, especially the customer.
Yeah. There's some really interesting companies coming out at the moment. So I think about Astra.finance, which is sort of almost like an if this then that, but for money movement. So they let you route, they're like a router, but for money. They let you route money based on a preconditioned set of rules from any app to any app, from any service to any service. And I just find that so exciting because what a builder as an entrepreneur is going to do with that. The other one is Investor Composer. Those guys are building rule sets for my investments and let me build my own bots. Like this kind of autonomous movement as an API is just super exciting space to watch kind of evolve.
On the point of Astra that finance, I was always frustrated when I worked for a couple of big financial institutions, and I would try to get my direct deposit to multiple bank accounts, right? One for savings, one for rent, whatever, and they would limit it at 2. Like, come on, I'm sure we can do better than that, right? And that's just a super simple use case.
Right. Isn't it nuts how much is just possible if you're aware of some of the fintechs that are out there and emerging, the tools now to build things better, faster, cheaper, and nuts. We talked a little bit about community. Speaking of community, do remember to throw in, if you are watching, do remember to throw us your questions. We've got some incredible guests here in Ryan and Miguel. Happy to ask those questions. But speaking of community, how are you guys feeling about podcasts versus Clubhouse? Ryan, we talked a little bit about this before. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, Clubhouse can stop blowing up my phone 6 times an hour. That would be the biggest boost in my love of Clubhouse. I think it's such a fascinating trend coming out. I love Clubhouse. I love the idea. I obviously love the team backing it, but I do sometimes feel that it might just be a pandemic flavor. I was really bullish. I think I was not optimistic. And then I started using it, and Wharton Fintech had some great events with the founders of Forge, iCapital, folks from QED. And now as I look again, I don't know about the staying power. I think if they start turning it into a more, creator empowered ecosystem where you can record podcasts directly, that's going to be very powerful. But I do worry about their moderation problem and their spontaneity problem. Because I mean, you're relying on your amazing community, of course, to just always have relevant content every single time I open the app. And I'm really only interested in a couple things. And, for them to be talking about fintech or, New York Jets football anytime I open Clubhouse is relatively unlikely. I think podcasts will always be here to stay. And I think Clubhouse has a lot to figure out, but it will sort itself out in the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch, Miguel.
It's the whole question whether they are a product or a feature, right? And we've seen Twitter has launched, I think they're called audio rooms or something like that. But I can see Instagram, Facebook, and everyone else launching some sort of audio room as well. And then it just becomes a feature. Why would you jump on Clubhouse? Listen, now I get it. Attention is there, or at least was a month ago there. We'll see where that goes. I feel exactly like Ryan does. I was super bullish a month ago. Now, not so much. At the same time, the team is amazing. It's run by some super talented people, so they could figure something out.
Indeed, and it's what an example of an investor backing up their investment in that one. I'm super interested in Twitter Spaces, that sort of real-time ephemeral conversation. And maybe all of these have a role in the future. And I love that point, Ryan, about what are the tools for creators that sit around that. We have had some audience questions come in. Keep those questions coming in, guys, as you're watching along. I don't know how to say this audience member's name, so I'm just going to say thank you very much, whoever you were that asked it. They asked, could you share your thoughts on how fintechs can become more financially attractive for more users in terms of cryptocurrencies, please? Ryan, Miguel, I don't know if you guys want to take that one on, kind of like maybe using crypto as a marketing tool.
I think, Ryan, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so repeat the question, how fintech apps can use crypto
to become more financially attractive.
Sure. So, I mean, if you're a super app, let's say like Cash App, crypto's not your core product. Absolutely not. But going back to feature versus product, it is an amazing feature. It's a hook. It's a sexy product right now. It gets a lot of people talking. I mean, PayPal just launched, that they're going to have crypto capability across all of their accounts. Everyone wants, whether they want to invest or not, they want the exposure and they want the option. And, going back to my conversation with Lex Sokol, and he just said, the first companies that figure out buying Bitcoin, et cetera, or getting into DeFi with the push of a button have amazing opportunities. In 2011, the thought of Coinbase was probably preposterous. Being able to buy and store and sell and view all of these different crypto prices on an exchange was crazy. And now they're about to, go public at a monster valuation. I think the next company that does this with DeFi, more so than just general mainstream crypto, has a huge opportunity. If you can make DeFi as easy as a push of a button instead of all of these crazy websites and different wallets and, gas fees, etc., then you really have something powerful there.
Yeah. This is a topic we talked about when I was on the podcast, on the Fintech Insider podcast a couple of weeks ago, right, with David. And we talked about wealth tech, specifically how, most of the platforms that started with traditional equities and traditional asset management services have at some point over the last couple of years added a crypto function, right? So they're giving users access. And initially it was just to buy Bitcoin, but now it's more and more every day, right? Now we're seeing PayPal even add conversion, real-time conversion, right? So, I mean, I'm not sure if this answers the question, but clearly it's a segment of the market that is lucrative and wants to be served, and companies are recognizing this.
It's going to be interesting to watch. I love that point, Ryan, about can you just make the pain go away? There's interesting wallets like Dun popping up. There's Echo that just got announced, and they're just kind of making it look like a savings account and saying, "Hey, we don't have FDIC, but here's how we do protect your money." And I like that approach. Right. There's a question from Siddharth Singh here that I think is a really good one. He says he'd love to hear more about the preparation effort that goes into a podcast, and are there any special plans for the future? Maybe focusing on a theme like expanding focus towards Asia?
Yeah, no, awesome question. I'll get it started, and then Ryan, you can add. So the preparation, I think something that's very important for anyone hosting a podcast, you got to talk about something that you already know, something that you're familiar with, something that you're passionate about, right? Because if you're gonna be researching a new topic for every new episode, it's gonna be challenging. I mean, it's doable, but you're gonna have to invest a lot of time. So for us, this is all I do. I am reading and researching and talking to people in fintech every day, all day. So when it comes to preparing, at least I don't have to read about the industry again, because I'm always doing that. So my preparation is more about the guest, right? Specific about their company, what are they doing, maybe check out some past interviews, and also connect the dots, right? And I think the best is when you're able to ask a question that hasn't been asked before of them. And sometimes they say that out loud. Oh, I've never heard this question. That is the best feeling. And in terms of also part of the preparation is, who are we talking to? Who's our audience, right? And in my mind, our audience are entrepreneurs, right? And these are people who are building companies, who are considering launching a fintech startup, and not just in the US, but around the world, right? And we hear from people in small countries with small fintech ecosystems that are building companies, but they don't have a lot of people to talk to, right? They don't have a big ecosystem. So they turn to podcasts like ours, and that's just super humbling.
One of the best things I ever heard about Fintech Insider was a product manager at a really exciting Series A startup, just been backed by one of the major VCs, reached out and said, hey, I just wanted to say thank you. You guys talked about something on the podcast once. We took that idea, and actually it's really central to the product we're building, and we think it's going to really help us differentiate. Okay. And it was just an off-the-cuff comment, and like that impact that you can have with a podcast to an entrepreneur, to a builder, especially in an emerging market, I think is just so powerful. I can see a lot more questions coming in. Really appreciate those from the audience, but we are running low on time. So as we're coming towards the end of the show, I want to finish off by doing a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask a question, and I want the first answer from Miguel, then Ryan. You guys ready?
No.
Not even slightly.
Let's do it.
All right, Miguel, if you didn't work in financial services, what would you do?
I would take Anthony Bourdain's old job and just eat around the world traveling.
I like that. Ryan, if you didn't work in financial services, what would you do?
That's a great answer, Miguel. I am a musician at heart. I'm a music junkie, have been since I was little. I play multiple instruments. I was in a cover band in college, played a little bit in New York. I'm in a band here at Wharton. I'd be, a musician on the streets of Nashville trying to make it.
You're in Nashville. I love Nashville. And okay, Miguel, are you ready? What celebrity would you have market your product or company?
Oh man, it's got to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's the greatest. He's the greatest.
Ryan, how about you?
That is a good question. I have to say, a proud Penn Wharton alum who can move the entire world with his Twitter fingers. That is Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, that's the shout, isn't it? That's get the meme lord memeing. Okay, Miguel, when was the last time you were paid in cash?
I was paid in cash. Oh my God, I can't even remember.
Ryan, when was the last time you were paid in cash?
I can remember the last time I paid in cash, and that was last summer. I went to my barber for the first time, and I was like, I don't want this guy to eat, the 2-3% fee. I want to give him cash and a big tip because of COVID, but I haven't been paid in cash in probably years.
Yeah, no, I get sort of low-key angry when I have to do anything with cash. I don't know if that's like a fintech thing, but there's this boiling rage of like, it's 2021. Why do I have to carry cash on me? But that's the margin for the payments companies right there. All right, just before we finish off, what's next for Wharton Fintech, Miguel?
Yeah, so we're excited. We're excited because we have recruited an amazing team that's going to take over the podcast. So they are going to take it to the next level, and they're going to continue pushing out amazing content. But then they have some great ideas on how to do more specialized topics, more, there's the conference, of course, is going to be in person whenever we can, and just continue to push out the best possible content, right? And you got to remember, for us, this is a labor of love. We're not getting paid to do this, right? We are effectively doing this because we are passionate about the industry. But I think that's also why we get to produce good content.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Ryan and Miguel, so much for joining me. Where can people find out more about you and everything you're up to at Wharton?
Sure, I'll take this one. Simon, thank you for having us on. If you are a fan of Wharton Fintech, want to learn about this amazing space along with us, you can find us on any platform. I would say Twitter and LinkedIn are our most popular, but don't sleep on our Instagram. You can find us at Wharton Fintech. And then, of course, myself and Miguel are available on both Twitter and LinkedIn. Our DMs are always open. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you guys so much. Right, well, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you also follow 11FS on LinkedIn so you never miss one of these episodes. Check out our YouTube channel, which is over 10K subs, and you can catch up on previous episodes. You can catch documentaries like 11years.film, Decoding Banking as a Service, and all of our content. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great week and a great Easter.
Thank you.